When Michael was first diagnosed, we took a piece of his tumor tissue and we took it to the lab and we started studying it. This was really important so that we could learn what's going on inside the tumor. Patients like Michael and others, it's really important that we continue to develop more and more research by having these tumor tissues available. The Musculoskeletal Oncology Tumor Registry here at UPMC, led by Dr. Kurt Weiss, is a very unique resource here. This is not something that every cancer center has available to them. What's been built here by Dr. Weiss and his team is absolutely amazing, so that we have a large amount of tumor tissue to make sure that there's a large enough sample size to really understand these integral parts of tumor biology.
The idea from the tissue bank happened when I was first recruited back to Pitt, and we finally got it. That was in 2010. We finally got it. The thing started in 2012. I learned that each one of these is so rare and so precious, and it really is possible to capture them all and bank them all with a concerted effort. If you're intentional about it, you can get all those biological reagents, and they're priceless. Every one of them is so unique and they're so rare. You really need those numbers. We can't afford to lose any. My interest is in how and why sarcoma cells spread from where they're at to a different part of the body, usually the lungs. That's my scientific interest. But different people have different scientific interests. They can't study their interest without raw materials, and the tissue that we get from sarcoma patients is the raw materials. One of the guiding principles of sarcoma surgery is margins. 99.999% is an unacceptable answer. It's got to be 100%. In a spot where we are absolutely certain that the margin is negative, I or one of my partners will cut into the tumor, get into the sarcoma, and scoop some of it out, and it gets put into a 50 milliliter conical tube of cell culture media that usually Tanya is standing there holding, and tumor goes in and it goes off to the lab, like right that second. We have had some opportunities to get primary tumor cells and metastatic tumor cells from the same patient. There aren't that many of them, but when they do happen, they're extraordinarily important from a scientific standpoint, because I can compare the primary tumor to the metastasized spread tumor that's gone someplace else, usually the lungs with sarcoma, and see what is different. I wanted to bring up a couple more things. A lot of the patients who've donated their tissues to the tumor registry and tissue bank, they're no longer with us. And so those particular tissues are precious for two reasons. Number one, all of the sarcomas we collect are precious because they're so rare. But a lot of times, that flask of cells or that chunk of tumor, that's all we got left to that person. All the patients know that. They're smart. They know that the research we're doing in the lab and all our collaborators, it's probably not going to help them. But they still donate to the tumor registry and tissue bank because maybe it'll help the next guy, the next lady, the next father, mother, child. And that's why they do it. All the mistakes we've made, all the hard work we've had to do up to this point wasn't for nothing, because now we've got it to a point where we're using it for not just our research, but we can export it to our colleagues. And we're starting to see the fruits of that, which is going to mean that we get more specimens and more papers and more research and more people that want to collaborate, and it's just going to build on itself. So we're at that slope of the curve, and it's an exciting place to be. The funds that we've gotten from Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma up to this point have done everything from soup to nuts, and that's no exaggeration. Everything from start to finish, from collecting the tumor in the operating room to getting it to the lab, to processing it, to storing it, none of that's free. And all of that is looked after by Pittsburgh Cure Sarcoma. I think the biggest contribution, though, is having personnel that are dedicated to that. And what that means is, back when we started this thing, when Dr. Goodman and I were trying to do this on our own, we were doing our best, but when we invested in a person, that being Tanya, when we finally had a person that was going to own that job and make sure everyone was consented and make sure everyone was signed up and being boots on the ground in the operating room, taking the sample to the lab and to our collaborators and making sure everything got where it had to go, that was the biggest change. Personnel, the human element, is much more expensive and more precious than any of the materials we use for the science.